Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes it's fun to be the contrarian. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals. We pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more, in a light and in a conversational fashion. And you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to assume that you do, because let's face it, you're listening right now. Subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. Give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. Plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we'd absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Letterboxd, the TikTok, the Threads, the Blue Sky, probably a few other places I'm forgetting too. And In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats. InTheSeats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because guess what? If we live to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it that much more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that kindness. Come on by and pay us a visit. On this episode, I'm not going to lie, we got a fun one. It is dropping on Paramount Plus tomorrow or today, depending when you listen to it. It is a brand new adventure in the Star Trek universe. It's called Star Trek Section 31. And to give you a little bit of background, it's kind of dovetailing off of episodes that happened during the run of Star Trek Discovery. And it's the story of Emperor Philippa Georgiou, this real badass villain, who played by Michelle Yeoh, who joins the secret division of Starfleet, tasked with protecting the United Federation of Planets, but a little off the books kind of way. It's a bit more sinister, a bit more going on, and she has to confront the sins of her very, very checkered past. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of dug this. It's not a perfect movie, but I really had fun with it, and it's nice to see Star Trek kind of trying to carve out different spaces in sort of its canon and its universe. And it's not a popular opinion. I know a lot of people didn't like it or are very precious to sort of Star Trek as it stands right now, but I really, really enjoyed this. And it stars Michelle Yeoh, Amari Hardwick, some fantastic Canadian talent in the one and only Casey Roll, Humberly Gonzalez, a few other people. It's a good movie. Like I said, it's dropping on Paramount Plus today, so check it out. But we had the unique pleasure of sitting down with the director of the film, Olatunde Osunsanmi. I apologize if I got that wrong, but he is a veteran of the sci-fi universe. He's been working in the Star Trek realm on multiple fronts for quite a while, and we had the unique pleasure of sitting down and picking his brain about getting this project off the ground and making the movie. But like I said, go check out the fantabulous Michelle Yeoh in Star Trek Section 31, which is dropping on Paramount Plus, streaming right now across the globe for everyone. If you've got Paramount Plus, it's a good service. I do recommend you go check it out. But first, enjoy our talk with Olatunde, because between you and me, it's a pretty darn good one. First off, just thank you so much for the time, man. I mean, just congrats on Section 31. I absolutely loved it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long time coming, and I'm excited that the world finally gets to see it this week. I can't believe it actually comes out this week.
It's huge, man. No, absolutely. Now, I mean, I guess my first question is like, walk me through, I guess, the origins of getting the ball rolling on something like this, because it really does feel like obviously with Michelle's character and sort of finding a way to steer off into something else, it feels like Star Trek is finally trying to carve out its own little niche, sort of outside of the canon. If that makes any kind of sense?
Yeah, the ball started rolling on this years ago when Michelle pitched it to Alex, and he liked it, and he got Craig Sweeney to write a script, and he'd been writing and rewriting over several years, given a bunch of scheduling conflicts and the state of the industry, and it went from being a series to a movie. And so now that it was a movie, it was very interesting because we had all these ideas for it, and it was like, okay, most of those ideas are being fleshed, and here's a new version with maybe just one or two characters besides Michelle that are still here from the series. And what is this thing now? And there's this edict that we have been living by that Alex Kurtzman set up, whereby each Star Trek, in order to be worth being made, and all the sacrifices that have to go into it, and the resources, has to have a reason for existing and has to be a little bit different from the other one. So that's why you have Discovery, and Strange New Worlds is different from Discovery, even though it's pretty much all the same people and crew that made it, right? And you've got Picard that was done in LA, and still had influences from a lot of the same writers. And now you have Starfleet Academy, which is the artwork is actually on the wall behind me, which is why it's covered it's covered up in black, because I don't want to get my hands slapped by marketing department, and by a bunch of others. Um, and so then you also have a 31, and the job of 31 was to examine and look at a part of the Star Trek universe that we haven't really seen before, and to do it in an organic way that is launched from what Star Trek is, but also, the universe is large, and not everything has to be on a Starfleet ship, even though I love Starfleet ships. And, I grew up watching the Enterprise and Deep Space Nine and TNG. And I grew up on the bridge, or the Enterprise, essentially. But it's such a rich universe. What else is there to see out there that could be of interest? And who better to show us what else there is out to see out there than Michelle Yeoh's character, Philippa Georgiou, who is that kind of thrill seeker.
Well,
So
I want to kind of dovetail off that, because just
yeah,
being able to sort of build out fresh, like, I mean, the nightclub, space station, like, absolutely
yeah,
loved it. And I mean, it's so intricate and so gorgeous. How big was it for you and your guys to sort of not necessarily have to follow the preconceived Star Trek rules? Like, we're doing something that we want to do now.
yeah. It's both liberating and terrifying. Because it's liberating because you get to do something creatively that you haven't done before, and there's fewer constraints. But it's terrifying because most of the people here grew up watching Star Trek, and we also have had our reactions to new Trek that we saw growing up as kids, right? Where it's like, I don't know if that's the Star Trek that I remember, right? And
Right.
so we're very cognizant of falling into that category. And for a lot of fans, maybe we have, that haven't seen the movie and don't understand the progression of how we got out there. But at the same time, it is creatively satisfying, because you ride this line. And we had to do the same thing with Discovery, because we were inventing everything from scratch, essentially, but in a different way. It's creatively satisfying, um, but we want to make sure we don't go too far with it. And so I think we pushed it as far as we thought we could, and by also having the movie be entertaining and fun, and giving fans something they haven't seen before, which is a reason to watch in and of itself, right? You want to see stuff that you haven't seen before and experience feelings you haven't quite felt before. So we think we
100%. Now, I mean, obviously, to have someone like Michelle want to do this has got to be a godsend, just to sort
yeah.
of fill you with confidence to get it done. But I'm kind of curious about casting, because you brought in such great actors. I mean, people like Casey and Humberly that I got to talk to before, and I mean, they're both fantastic in this movie. But I mean, I can imagine that when you're casting, on one end, you have to be able to find people who are not only right for the role, but right for sort of the to be able to carry the legacy of Star Trek if things go as planned.
Yeah, I like what you did there by mentioning that having Michelle is like a godsend. I like what you did there. Um, but yeah, Casey. I mean, the casting of this was not easy. When we found Casey, it was like the moment I saw her, I was like, that's the one. That it's her. And I know Craig Sweeney and Alex Crispin felt the same way as well. And what she's able to do by navigating her in a pre-existing role, along with the drama, along with the humor and the wit, I thought she did masterfully. And with the same token, Umberly was the same way. The moment I saw her, I was like, she's the one. And we were able to bring in her Latin roots into the character and just use that and play with that. And she did it in such a way it just feels so real. And it's nice to have that kind of freshness and bring that to a character within the Star Trek universe. So it was we were really lucky with the cast that we filled out here. And I think Canada has an unbelievable pool of great actors and a wonderful tradition with Star Trek actors. And that tradition continues with this modern day version of Trek that we have here that we see in Toronto. 90% of the cast that you see in the Discovery, Strange New Worlds, will see in Starfleet Academy and did see in Section 31 are Canadian actors. And I think that speaks volumes to where the industry is here.
Well, I love that too. Just that we have our own little sort of piece of Star Trek lore, and I mean, it makes me proud just as a fan almost. But I'm kind of curious for something on your perspective because obviously you've been with sort of the franchise for a minute, but also you've had other jobs, you've worked on other shows. Is there a way to describe how transitioning from sort of a shoot on show X to sort of getting a job inside of the Star Trek universe kind of changes you? Because I can imagine it's more than just sort of a quote unquote job.
Yeah, excellent question. It's transformer. It's trans what's what I'm looking for?
Transformative.
Transformative. Thank you. Because first of all, if you grew up watching Star Trek, that would be a big enough deal right then and there because you're
Totally.
walking to a starship and you're realizing, okay, it's real in 360 degrees. Like it's real and this button actually lights up when I touch it. If you're a director coming in and you didn't grow up loving Star Trek, maybe you grew up liking it. It's still a big deal. And the reason why it's a big deal is because everything in space is harder. It's harder because the clothes, sure, the sets, the phasers, everything didn't exist before it did. So we got to build it all from scratch. And there's so much detail that goes into planning every single frame that you see that it can be completely, totally, and absolutely overwhelming as a filmmaker. And then you throw on top of that the history of the Discovery or Strange New Worlds. You're coming in maybe season 3. And now you got to learn all that history because if you don't know the history, you're not going to be able to communicate with the cast. And then on top of that, you got to throw in the history of the entire franchise. And that is an unbelievable, intimidating thing because it's not just it's not just like these are past movies or past television shows that occurred. It's living history that is real for millions of people. It's not make believe. It actually happened in millions of people's minds. So when you consider all of that, you basically have an inverted pyramid that's sitting on top of your head,
Yeah.
and pressing down on you. But so you just got to take it through one step at a time. We've got a lot of help here and a lot of people here who are students of the franchise, and you got to listen, and that's how you get through it, one step at a time.
Is it surreal to have worked on other shows? Because I mean, I think of specifically of something like Falling Skies and then sort of Man Who Fell to Earth, both of which have elements that were informed by Star Trek, but now
Yeah,
you're working on Star Trek.
yeah, that's it. That's a excellent observation. I had never actually quite looked at it that way, but that is exactly right. For me, I've always been a fan of alien sci-fi.
Sure.
And my whole career now, as I look back, it's like most of it's alien sci-fi. And so I look at Star Trek as a version of realism. It's
Yeah.
it's real to me. Like I believe there could be a world where we have a parallel civilization or parallel military industrial complex that is developing technologies that we won't find out about for 50 years, just like we didn't find out about the stealth bomber for 20 years after it existed. That have the ability to have craft that are flying up in space in sort of like a Space Force scenario. And if they were able to develop something like that, why wouldn't it look something like Star Trek? And so when I look at these different shows like Falling Skies or Man Who Fell to Earth, what I think, and when I look at Star Trek, I look, okay, this is a possible reality. This is a possible reality. Oh, maybe they got it right. But all of these forward-looking future sci-fi or present-day apocalyptic sci-fi are versions of possible realities if things go right or if things go wrong. And that's what attracts me to him.
I mean, just put a bow on this because I mean, and honestly, I think the biggest compliment I can give Section 31 is that it feels like Star Trek, but it's not Star Trek.
Uh,
It manages to be of its own thing. And I mean, I'm curious as ideas grow and more shows come out and more ideas for films and whatnot come out as you guys are all working collaboratively in this universe. What do you think sort of the key will be to sort of be able to have these moments where we can jump to a side and have an adventure with a character here or there? Will it be character? Will it be an idea? Or will it sort of be a combination of it all?
I think it's a combination of all driven by character. And there has to be a really good reason to go out to these different places and to branch out. And usually at the end of the day, when we think about Star Trek, well, I guess, Star Trek, it does is a character in and of itself. But usually we follow these characters. We follow Kirk, or we follow Spock, or we follow Burnham, or we follow Pike. Um, and that's when and the way we identify with these characters is what Star Trek is in our hearts. And also it's about what Star Trek in general just kind of feels to us, that it inspires us to be better. And it's a place that many of us would really rather live in. And it's it, you know, as filmmakers, and I know for Alex and the other wonderful writers he's got working with him, it tends to be is why they always ask the question, why is this particular story worth telling? Wherever it is in the Star Trek universe, is it going to be worth it? Is it going to be worth all of the resources that we're going to have to marshal in order to get it told? Is it something that the fans are going to want to see and enjoy? And is there something that we can, some sort of lesson that can be taught from it? But at the end of the day, is it going to be worth it? And is it going to have enough Star Trek in it that that it's going to be loved and beloved and deserve a place in the canon forever? So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they come up with next.
With the right characters, it doesn't necessarily need to be on the bridge of a starship or in a sort of Federation kind of cocoon. It can be a little off to the side, and I mean, I think that's what this does so well. But I mean, honestly, man, again, thank you for the work, and just thank you again for the time today. I really appreciate it, and congrats on the release on Friday, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't believe it's Friday. I really appreciate you watching, and thank you for the kind words. And
You're very welcome, man. All right, talk to you again soon.
it's been great talking to you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.